Welcome to Soundview Live. I'm Megan Kozak, Editor-in-Chief at Soundview. Today, we are so honored to have with us best-selling author Stephen M.R. Covey. Stephen M.R. Covey is a New York Times and #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling author of The Speed of Trust. He is the former CEO of Covey Leadership Center, which under his stewardship became the largest leadership development company in the world. Stephen personally led the strategy that propelled his father's book, Dr. Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, to become one of the 2 most influential business books of the 20th century, according to CEO magazine. As president and CEO of Covey Leadership Center, Stephen nearly doubled revenues while increasing profits by 12 times. During that period, the company expanded throughout the world into over 40 countries. Within 3 years of Stephen being named CEO, he had grown shareholder value to $160 million in a merger he orchestrated with Franklin Quest to form Franklin Covey. Stephen also co-founded CoveyLink, a consulting practice which focuses on enabling leaders and organizations to increase and leverage trust to achieve superior performance. He recently merged CoveyLink with Franklin Covey, forming the Global Speed of Trust practice, where Stephen serves as global practice leader. In this Soundview Live webinar, Stephen M.R. Covey brings insights from his latest book, Trust and Inspire, in which he makes the argument that even though our world has changed drastically, our leadership style has not, and it's time to change that. To further build on this, Stephen will present his new way of leading that starts with the belief that people are creative, collaborative, and full of potential. I'd like to welcome today's webinar presenter, Stephen M.R. Covey.
Well, thank you, Meg, for that kind introduction. And to our Soundview listeners and viewers and readers, I'm delighted to be with you to talk to you today about this new book, Trust and Inspire: How Truly Great Leaders Unleash Greatness in Others. And this book is out, and I hope that you'll find this valuable. I'm going to give you an overview and a summary, and I hope to provide some insight into leadership style that you'll find helpful. It was many years ago that we had the highest temperature ever measured on Earth, 134 degrees in Death Valley, California. Now, Death Valley is called Death Valley because nothing grows there. It's hot, it's dry. They only average about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall a year. And with that heat and the lack of rain, nothing grows. That's why they call it Death Valley. But interestingly, in the winter of 2004, for some unknown reason, 6 inches of rain fell in a very short period of time. And then later in that spring in 2005, something happened. And what happened is wildflowers popped up and grew everywhere. It turns out it wasn't dead after all. It was just dormant. In fact, that's what the late Sir Kenneth Robinson said. Maybe we should call it Dormant Valley. See, the seeds were there all along. They just needed to be nourished and cultivated and had the right conditions for those seeds to flourish. And when they were, it changed everything and they grew. And wildflowers carpeted the entire valley. In a sense, people are a lot like that. The seeds of greatness, the potential is inside of people. Our job as a leader is to see that potential, to communicate that potential, to develop that potential, and to unleash that potential. But the life, the power is in the seed. It's in the people. We're gardeners. As leaders, we are gardeners trying to cultivate conditions for that potential to be unleashed. That's the overarching premise of Trust and Inspire: How Truly Great Leaders Unleash Greatness in Others. Now let's talk about our world and what's going on. So our world has changed profoundly, as we all know. Well, look around. In fact, I'll briefly describe 5 emerging forces of change. The nature of the world itself has changed. We have so much information, so much technology, disruptive change, the pace of change, the amount of change. Do you know that human knowledge today doubles every 12 hours? So you can't be a know-it-all, as Dr. Carol Dweck talked about. You got to become a learn-it-all because there's too much to know. So the nature of the world has changed. The nature of work has changed. It's far more collaborative, more interdependent, more service-oriented. We're in a knowledge worker age, not the traditional industrial age. Now, we still have industrial age work, but even that is embedded and infused with knowledge everywhere. The nature of the workplace has changed dramatically, where you can work from home or work from anywhere. You can have all remote companies or all on-site companies or a hybrid, a combination. We're seeing intentionally flexible work possibilities and options that we never saw before. The nature of the workforce has changed. We have more diversity than we've ever seen, which is a great opportunity for us. But we have as many as 5 generations at work, and Gen Z and millennials have a different expectation and mindset than some of the older generations of how to approach it. And the nature of choice has changed. We've gone from what we might call multiple choice to infinite choice, where there's all kinds of options and possibilities of what is out there for people. And so the reason that this is relevant is that now people in the work from anywhere environment can choose to go anywhere they want. That's why we're in this midst of this great resignation, a great reshuffling, whatever it is. People have choices and options they didn't before. And all these forces of change have clarified what I call 2 epic imperatives of our time. They are the consequences, or they are the implications of these forces of change that are upon us in society. And here's what they are. The first epic imperative of our time is this: the need to create a high trust culture that can attract, retain, engage, and inspire the best people and bring out the best in people. We've got to build a great culture to win the war for talent. We've got to build a great culture to be able to attract and inspire the very best people when they have so many choices and options like never before. Every organization has this imperative, or else they'll become less and less relevant, and they won't win that war for talent, and they'll lose their people. So that's the first imperative: create a high trust culture that inspires people. Let me give you the second imperative. Is to collaborate and innovate in order to stay relevant in a changing, disruptive world. The thing about that is that the world all around us is changing, so we got to change with it, and we have to stay relevant with it. And you can't do that without innovation, and you can't innovate without collaboration. So what is needed? To collaborate and innovate to stay relevant in a changing world, or else we'll become irrelevant. That is the second imperative. And every organization has that too. If they're not collaborating and innovating, they will fall behind. So those are the 2 epic imperatives of our time. Create a high trust culture that inspires, collaborate and innovate to stay relevant in a changing world. Here's another way of framing it. The first one is to win in the workplace. And the second one is to win in the marketplace. We need to do both. And the sequence matters. In order to win in the marketplace, we need to first win in the workplace by attracting and inspiring the best people and bringing out the best in people so that they can collaborate and innovate to stay relevant in the changing world. This is all about inspiration and innovation. Those are the epic imperatives of our time. And it's a consequence of these 5 emerging forces. That is the environment we find ourselves in. So the world has changed. But you know what? Our style of leadership has not. Or at least it hasn't kept pace with this changing world. We're still too much leading in the old way of leading, the old model of leadership, what we might call command and control. We just become better at it, more sophisticated, more advanced, more enlightened. But our paradigm, our mindset of how we view people and leadership is still too much tied to the industrial age. It's a relic of the industrial age. But here's the thing. In this new world, the prevailing style of leadership, which really still is an enlightened command and control, is no longer relevant for this new world, for this new reality. Because command and control will not enable you to build a high-trust culture that inspires people, and it will not enable you to truly collaborate and innovate, to stay relevant in a changing world. You can't command and control your way to collaboration or innovation. You can't command and control your way to a great culture. So it's not relevant for the new world, the new reality. What we need is a leadership style that is relevant and in juxtaposition to command and control. I call the new way to lead trust and inspire. Trust and inspire. So what is trust and inspire? Well, the best way to describe that is to do a contrast to command and control. So here's a few contrasts we might look at. Command and control is about managing people and things. Trust and inspire is about managing things, but leading people. The danger comes when we start to manage people as if they were things. When you do that, you know what you're going to end up with? A lot of things and no people, because they'll leave and they'll go somewhere else. So manage things, lead people. Command and control, the old model, is about compliance. That's following the rules. That's a good thing, but trust and inspire is about commitment. Higher, it includes compliance, but a higher level. It's about doing the right thing. Command and control is very transactional in its nature. Trust and inspire is transformational. It transforms relationships, teams, even cultures. Command and control, you'll get coordination among groups or among silos. Then you'll coordinate, a good thing, but you're leaving a lot of value on the table. Trust and inspire, you'll get collaboration among teams, and you'll be able to be far more effective as a team and as a flexible, interconnected team. Command and control is good for status quo and incremental improvement, but trust and inspire is good for change and innovation, which characterizes our world today, right? That whole second epic imperative. Command and control, you'll achieve association. Trust and inspire is about belonging and inclusion in this new world. Association is good, but not enough. We need true sense of belonging and a sense of inclusion. That comes from trust and inspire. Command and control, you're a machinist. It's a mechanistic paradigm of the world. Trust and inspire, you're a gardener. It's organic. And it's the idea of the death valley wildflowers blossoming. Command and control, by definition, it's about controlling people or containing people. Trust and inspire, it's about releasing and unleashing the capabilities that are inside of people, the greatness. It's about creating the conditions for that to flourish and to blossom. Command and control, it's about motivation, which is external. It's extrinsic. It's outside of you. Trust and inspire, by contrast, is about inspiration. It's intrinsic. It's inside of you. And our job is to breathe life into. That's what inspire means. It comes from the Latin term inspirare, to breathe life into something. Whereas the opposite of inspire is to expire, which means to suffocate or to kill. We're dying. So command and control, you're suffocating, expiring, dying. Trust and inspire, you're breathing life into. And that is inspiring. That can burn on for years. Whereas in motivation, external carrot and stick motivation, you got to keep providing more and more rewards to motivate people to get more rewards. Whereas inspiration can burn on for years. Here's the thing. You look at command and control, trust and inspire. Today, if we're going to try to operate with a leadership style that's still command and control in our new world of work and our new society today, you know what? That is the equivalent of playing tennis with a golf club. The tool we're using, the style of leadership that we're employing, if we're doing command and control, is totally ill-suited to the game being played. It's not relevant. And command and control has become irrelevant in this new world. We need a new style of leadership. We need trust and inspire. We need a tennis racket to play tennis. And so this Trust and Inspire is this new way to lead in the new world. And it'll make you far more effective, far more relevant, and you'll win in those two epic imperatives. You'll win in the workplace by building a high trust culture that inspires, and you'll win in the marketplace because you'll be able to collaborate and innovate to stay relevant in a changing world. That is the power of Trust and Inspire. All right, so let's take a look at how this works. So see this as the meta style continuum, because in a sense, your overarching style based upon how you view people in leadership is rooted in either some version of command and control or trust and inspire. This is the meta style, if you will, not the sub style. And so you start with authoritarian command and control. For the most part, we're outgrowing that. We've become more sophisticated, more advanced. We brought in emotional intelligence. We brought in mission. We brought in strengths. And it's moved us to an enlightened command and control, which is far better, but still only incrementally improved. It's different in degree, but not in kind. What we really need in this new world, because of those 5 emerging forces and the need to win in the workplace, win in the marketplace in new and different ways, we need to cross the chasm. We need a sea change in how we lead. We need to cross the chasm into trust and inspire. Let's take a look at what this means. In authoritarian command and control, that's kind of what can I do to you. Enlightened command and control is more what can I do for you. So it's kind of transactional and exchange based. Trust and inspire is all about what I can do with you. It's a completely different mindset and paradigm of how I view people in leadership and what leadership implies. And it feels and looks differently to people, to the followers, and to people in the organizations. And by the way, when I talk about leaders, I'm talking about everyone. Everyone is a leader. You may or not be supervising people, but you lead yourself, you lead your life, you lead on teams, even if you're not the team leader. Leadership is a choice, not a position. Now, you might think, well, I get this. Okay, it makes sense, but I'm already trust and inspire. In fact, here's the interesting thing. The biggest barrier to becoming a trust and inspire leader is that we think we already are one. But you know what? The data shows from research that about 30% of people in organizations are still in authoritarian command and control. About 62% have moved up the continuum into enlightened command and control, far better. But only about 8% have really crossed the chasm into trust and inspire. So the biggest barrier to becoming a trust and inspire leader is that we think we already are one. And most of us aren't quite there yet. Maybe we want to be, but we might not be. It may not show up that way. I was just with a superintendent of schools, and he shared this experience where he talked about how when he saw this continuum, he said, yeah, well, I'm trust and inspire for sure. But then when I kind of went through it, the fundamental beliefs behind it and the stewardships of a trust and inspire leader, he realized, no, I'm not. And afterwards, he came up to me and said, when you start your presentation, I said, for sure, I'm trust and inspire. But by the end, I realized, you know what? I'm still enlightened command and control. Because while I try to model the behavior and while I try to inspire my people, I realize I'm still not fully trusting. And so if we really take this on and challenge ourselves, how do we show up for others? How would they describe us? Would they see us as trust and inspire? Or do they more experience it as enlightened command and control? If we're still trying to motivate instead of inspire, we're maybe in the command and control more than we think. Let me give you 2 examples of a trust and inspire leader and how they've revitalized their organizations because of it. So here's the first one. First example I give is of Microsoft under the leadership of Satya Nadella. When he came in, changed everything. He came into a situation where Microsoft was kind of fading. They were still big because of all their market share, but they were fading into less and less relevance. They were losing people. Their culture wasn't strong. There's a lot of infighting in their culture. A cartoonist did a cartoon of the warring factions within Microsoft with guns pointed at each other. That was kind of representative of the culture. So people were leaving. and they were not as innovative. This is when Nadella came in. He comes in and adopts a trust and inspire approach, adopts a growth mindset, adopts the idea that there's greatness inside of people. And he modeled the behavior. He trusted his people and got people to adopt this growth mindset across the board. And he inspired. They connected to people. They also focused on caring. They modeled, they coached, they cared. They modeled, they trusted, they inspired. And it transformed the organization. Today, they're winning in the workplace. They got a great culture. They're winning the war for talent. They're not perfect, but they're relevant again. It's a cool place to work. They're also winning in the marketplace. They're far more collaborative and innovative than ever before. And their stock price, it's increased almost by 10 times during this time. So, and it's all revitalized through leadership style that unleashed the capabilities, the talents, the potential of people and of the organization. The seeds were always there, but Nadella created the conditions for those seeds to flourish and to blossom. That's what the power of a leadership style can do, trust and inspire. Let me give you another example. This is of Cheryl Batchelder, and she just recently retired. She was the CEO of Popeyes, Louisiana Kitchen, franchise, fast food, selling chicken. And here's the interesting thing. They'd had, prior to Cheryl coming in, they'd had 4 CEOs in 7 years. They'd kind of gone through this. It was very much the old model, old style of leadership, command and control. She comes in and takes on a situation that others had not succeeded at and completely transforms the organization and the results through her leadership style. She modeled, she trusted, and she inspired. By modeling, I mean she listened and showed empathy. She delivered results and performance for her people. She focused on building a relationship of trust with her franchisees as the highest value, more than with her investors. And she told her investors, "You're not my first priority. My first priority is my franchisees." And then she delivered on that. She did what she said she was going to do. She modeled the behavior. She extended trust to her own people and to the franchisees. They reciprocated and returned the trust. They also were inspired by it and rose to the occasion. She demonstrated caring, and that inspired people, and also connected people to purpose, to meaning, to contribution. That inspired people. Long story short is that they began to win again in the workplace, building their culture and winning with a great relationship of trust between the franchisees and the head office. That inspired people. And then they began to win in the marketplace. And as they collaborated and innovated and stayed relevant in a changing world. And they got the results as well. Their stock price went from 11 to 79. They doubled almost their market share. Pretty remarkable examples. But again, a lot of factors behind it, but the fundamental differentiator that unleashed this kind of potential that was in the seeds was Cheryl's leadership style, being trust and inspire. And she truly was a servant leader who trusted, and it unleashed everything. So this is possible. This is the idea of what you can do with the trust and inspire style. So I made this point. I've given a couple of examples, but all of this, if we want to lead with trust and inspire, it starts with how we view people and how we view leadership. It starts with what I call the fundamental beliefs of a trust and inspire leader, of how they view people, how they view leadership. So I'm going to go through these beliefs and recognize that collectively they establish a paradigm, a way of seeing the world. So let's go through them. Here's the first belief. The first belief is that I believe people have greatness inside of them. So if you buy that belief, there's an implication to it, an action to the belief. So my job as a leader is to unleash their potential, not to try to contain or control them. And again, I'm like the gardener that's trying to create the conditions for the seed to flourish, because I believe the potential is in the people. The life is in the seed, the power is in the seed, and I'm trying to unleash it. Another belief. I believe that people are whole people, meaning body, heart, mind, spirit. So if I believe that, then my job as a leader is to inspire, not merely motivate. But if I only view people as economic beings only, then motivation's enough, right? Carrot and stick. That's the industrial age. That's command and control. Carrot and stick, because they're economic beings. But when they're whole people and they have a heart and a mind and a spirit, then they want to be inspired. You can buy people's backs and hands, but you can only inspire people's hearts and minds. And that's why inspiration is a higher approach than motivation. Let's go to another belief. I believe that there is enough for everyone. That's an abundance mentality, abundance mindset. So if that's true, then my job as a leader is to elevate caring above competing. It's what Nadella did at Microsoft when there was competing, almost warring groups inside the organization. And he changed the approach to caring and to collaborating internally, and they can compete externally. So collaborate on the inside, compete on the outside, elevate caring above competing. Why? Because there's enough for everyone. See, scarcity may be sound economic theory, but scarcity is lousy leadership theory. There's an abundance of everything good in leadership, of the trust that you can make, establish, of the creativity, of innovation, of inclusion, of capability, of talent, of greatness. There's an abundance of that. It's a better way to lead. Let's go to another belief. I believe that leadership is stewardship. It's not about position. It's not about rights. It's about stewardship. It's about responsibilities, implicit duties, responsibilities inherent in leadership. And it's a mindset. So if I buy that, then my job as a leader is to put service above self-interest. Self-interest will take care of itself. It will get its own. The question is, are we leading by serving? Do we put service above self-interest? And that's a better way to lead. And it flows out of a stewardship mindset. Stewardship means a job with a trust. And so this is a belief I have that leaders are stewards and that leadership is stewardship. And finally, another belief that's critical. I believe that enduring influence is created from the inside out. So my job as a leader is to go first. Someone needs to go first. Leaders go first. And by going first, they're modeling. By going first, they're taking that risk, but getting the return. And they're inspiring people to follow. It's Satya Nadella going first. It's Cheryl Batchelder going first and leading out. And people see it and they're inspired by it. And they want to do the same. Leaders go first. Inside out. That's why you win in the workplace so that you can win in the marketplace. That's inside out. That's going first internally so we can do it externally. Inside out. Now look at these beliefs collectively. On the left, I believe, these are the fundamental beliefs. On the right are the action beliefs that are tied to it. So if I believe these things, then this is what I need to do. Put into action, put into practice. I find that most people might kind of believe and resonate with the beliefs on the left, but they struggle with always trying to match it with their behaviors and their actions on the right. And that's what the opportunity is. So here's a question for all of us to think about. In what situations or in what relationships does your style, your action, get in the way of your intent, your beliefs? Because oftentimes style gets in the way of intent. Our intent might be good. We might have good beliefs about people, but the way they experience us, the way we come across, our style, our leadership style could get in the way of our intent. Don't let your style get in the way of your intent. And it often happens. So I invite you, go back to these beliefs. Look on the right. Would you pick one of these as we walk out of our session today? I want this to not just be a description of what's in this book, I want this to be actually useful to you as a leader. I invite you to pick one of these fundamental beliefs to work on, to get better at, where maybe your style might be getting in the way of your intent. Maybe you have the belief on the left, but your style on the right is not matching up with it. Pick one that you want to work on and get better at as we walk out of our webinar today. All right, so it starts with style, how we view people, how we view leadership. Now look at the fourth one there. Leadership is stewardship. So if leadership is stewardship, stewardship means a job with a trust. What are the jobs with a trust for leaders today? What does a trust and inspire leader do as a stewardship of how they lead? Well, there are three things that they do. These are the three stewardships to move from command and control to trust and inspire. The future of leadership is moving from command and control to trust and inspire. These are the three stewardships that help us do it. They flow out of the paradigm, which is the fundamental beliefs collectively. That's the paradigm of how we view people and leadership. It's a more accurate, more complete, more relevant paradigm. And the implications of that are, I lead in these three ways, doing these three things. First, they model. Second, they trust. And third, they inspire. It's that simple, and yet that difficult. Modeling, trusting, inspiring. Those are the three stewardships of a trust and inspired leader. Modeling is who you are. Trusting is how you lead. Inspiring is connecting to why. So let's look at modeling. Who you are. Everyone is modeling. The question is, what are they modeling? So what does a trust and inspire leader model? Well, we've identified certain behavioral virtues that are critical and vital to model today. Before I go into these virtues, I want to stop and just say this, that overall, a trust and inspired leader, what do they model? They model the behavior that they wish to see. They model the behavior that is needed in the organization today. They don't wait on anyone else. They go first. They model living the values. So they model the behavior is a good way to describe it. But in particular, there are these behavioral virtues that are powerful, and they come in pairs. And when they're in pairs, it's an even more powerful combination. They're independently valuable, each of these, but in pairs, it's an extraordinary combination. Humility and courage, authenticity and vulnerability, empathy and performance. These are the pairings. Humility and courage means that I'm humble and yet courageous at the same time. In Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, that was the essence of a level 5 leader. Deep personal humility with intense professional will. It takes courage to be humble. It's a powerful combination. Empathy and performance, you might say, well, that's an interesting combination. But by demonstrating empathy, understanding with people and for people, you actually help them be able to perform better because you learn their world and their situation, their context, and you can be more helpful as a coach to help them perform. And you yourself model the performance that is needed. It's a beautiful, powerful combination. We need more empathy in our world today, but you cannot have a leadership model. And I call this one trust and inspire. It's got to perform. It's got to deliver. It's got to get the outcomes in a way that also grows the people. That's empathy and performance. The one I want to highlight here is authenticity and vulnerability. You see, authenticity means it's real. It's real. There's so much fake out there. Authentic means to be real. It's when my public life is aligned with my private life, which is aligned with my inner life. It's real, whole integratedness, authentic. So we're real. We need that today. Vulnerability means this. Vulnerability means that we let people see into us. Sometimes people say, well, vulnerability is being weak. No, it's being strong. As Brene Brown said, vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable. But you know what? The very act of being vulnerable, as Brene Brown says, inspires trust. It creates trust. Why? Because you're real, you're authentic, and you're letting people see how real you are. It's amazing what this does. I'll give you just a quick example of this. Brad Smith, when he was CEO of Intuit, this was written about in an article. He got his 360 feedback report. You know what? He posted it outside of his office for everyone to see. Talk about vulnerability. But aren't you more inclined to really admire and trust that type of leader that is that real, that humble, and that courageous, that authentic, that vulnerable? You are. So this invites reciprocity. Powerful way to lead. Let me give you 2 great things you can do to practice vulnerability, I should say. The first is to declare your intent. That's where you share not only what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Always give the why behind the what. So you might come into a team meeting and you say, team, here's what we're trying to do. Here's why we're trying to do it. I don't have a hidden agenda. I have an open agenda. I'm transparent. There's nothing to hide. And I'm declaring it. I'm declaring my intent. I'm open. Yes, you're vulnerable, but you build trust this way. There's no hidden agenda operating here. Second, even declare yourself. I learned this from Doug Conant. When he was CEO of Campbell Soup Company, they went from worst to first in engagement. They also improved their performance along the way. And he said the number one practice that did it was declaring himself, meaning he's open, authentic about who he is, how he likes to work with people, how he likes to lead, so that they take the mystery out of the relationship. There's no mystery. I'm authentic and I'm vulnerable. I declare myself. I declare my intent. I declare myself. Those are 2 extraordinary best practices, but they take humility and courage to implement. So you can see how these are all wed together. Here's my main point when it comes to modeling. Leaders go first. We're back to that fundamental belief. You got to go first. Be the first to extend trust, even when there's some risk. Be smart about it, but find the ways to do it. Be the first to talk straight when everyone's spinning. Be the first to be transparent and open and authentic and vulnerable when everyone else is playing their cards close to the vest and when everyone else is operating with hidden agendas. Someone needs to go first. Leaders go first. That's modeling. Everyone is modeling. The question is, what are we modeling? If you model those behavioral virtues separately and in combination, that will be powerful. That's the kind of leadership that is needed in our new world today. Modeling. The second stewardship is trusting. Trusting others. It's how we lead. Now consider this. You could have 2 trustworthy people working together, and they're both trustworthy. And yet, no trust between them, even though they're both trustworthy, if neither person is willing to extend trust to the other. So if you want to build trust, you've got to give trust. You've got to earn it. You've got to give it. You've got to be trustworthy, and you've got to be trusting. Well, as trust and inspired leaders, we have a stewardship, an implicit responsibility to trust our people. Now, I'm not asking you to blindly trust them. Be smart about it. Assess the situation, the risk, the credibility of the people involved. That's the context. That's your analysis. That's important. But have a propensity, a bias, an inclination to trust, to be trusting. Blend your heart with your head, but lead with your heart, your desire to be trusting. Balance it with your head, your analysis of the context, the situation, the risk, the credibility. To have good judgment. But we need to be far more trusting than we've been. Our biggest problem is not that we're trusting too much. Our biggest problem is we're not trusting enough. Generally speaking, there could be some exceptions to that. The key to making sure that the trust you give is smart is these top 2 points. Always focus on clarifying expectations and practicing accountability to the trust being given. If you do that up front, whenever you are trusting of someone or extending trust to a team or to a person, to a family member or someone in the community, if you always focus on kind of building the agreement, the stewardship agreement around clear expectations and agreed upon process for accountability to those expectations. That will keep that trust in a smart vein. There'll be a smart trust, not a blind trust. The key is the agreement. And the key to the agreement is to clarify expectations and to agree to a process of accountability. That's powerful. And when you do that, you know what? People will perform better. You'll get better results. There's overwhelming data. When there's trust in an organization, people perform better. High trust organizations outperform low trust organizations by about 3 times. The data is overwhelming. People respond to being trusted. The key is to do it through an agreement of expectations and accountability, but be more trusting. So you'll get better results, but you'll also grow the people. And that's what we're trying to do. Get results in a way that grows people. Now, let's take a look at this. Here's what trusting does in building a culture of inclusion. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is on everyone's minds today. The foundation of it is trust. Why? Because differences are our strengths when people trust each other. But differences are often viewed suspiciously, and in some cases even divisively, when people don't trust each other. So if you want to build that culture of inclusion, start with trust and be more trusting of people. Perhaps our strongest unconscious bias is all around who we decide to trust. So open yourself up to become more trusting as a leader and find the possibilities, the opportunities. Again, I'm not saying blindly trust anyone and everyone. Use smart trust, use good judgment, but find the possibilities, the opportunities to extend more trust, to be more trusting. It will help us build cultures of inclusion that can become the greatest source of our creativity and our innovation, because that's where innovation happens, is when there's differences that interplay and even interact and even collide in an environment of trust. Robert Porter Lynch is an innovation specialist. He says the innovation flourishes when there's a collision of differences in an environment of trust. So the point is, the greater the contrast in our differences, the greater the potential in innovation. So innovation comes from diversity. But you need trust as the agent to make it happen. And to have trust, you need to be not only trustworthy, but trusting. We will never have trust without being trusting. Now, trusting is hard. It sounds easy, but this is hard. Because maybe I've trusted before and been burned. Maybe I didn't set up the agreement right. A lot of barriers that can get in the way. I tried it didn't work. Or I don't know how to do this. Or, what if I lose control? Or what if they're not as good at this as I am, etc. All kinds of barriers that get in the way of being trusting. We overestimate how trusting we are. We think we're pretty trusting, but the data shows that we're not as good as we think. Look at this data. 80,000 surveys of individual 360s, a cumulative roll-up, where people at the extreme say, I'm always trusting. I'm always trusting. People say, I'm doing it at this 45%. Others are saying, I'm doing it at 15. There's a 3 times gap. We think we're far more trusting than others are experiencing. Trusting is hard. I go back and present, let's say I've done some speed of trust work, my prior work, and I go back a second time, I move into trust and inspire. Why? Because people need to learn to become more trusting, not just trustworthy. And that's so powerful. Now, let me show you the outcomes of this. There's 3 growth outcomes of trusting. This is why trusting is a better way to lead. First is people will rise to the occasion and they will perform better. You'll be more productive and you'll see it in every respect. People also will develop greater capabilities. One of the best ways to build capability is to trust people into new areas, new opportunities to grow and develop. Now, again, be smart about it. You're not trying to do it in a way that you grow people, but you fail on the project. You're always balancing the two of getting the result in a way that grows the people. But people need the chance. They need the opportunity. And they will develop greater capabilities and they will perform better. And the third thing is they will reciprocate and return the trust. When you trust people, they tend to trust you. When you don't trust people, they tend to not trust you. I've seen that with organizations where in low trust companies and employees don't trust their management. is first and foremost because the management doesn't trust the employees. And the employees reciprocate that distrust right back at them. Distrust is suspicious. Distrust is contagious. But here's the good news. So is trust. And trust and confidence create more trust and confidence. And when you give it, people receive it and they return it. And they're inspired by it, they rise to the occasion, they perform better. It's a better way to lead in our new world. Here's a fun example of it. So this is Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets. So this is years ago. He's going to do a Muppets movie, right, for the first time. So he hires the famous world-renowned composer, Paul Williams, to write the songs for the movie. And so they get together to meet on this for the first time. And Paul Williams is going to tell his experience of working with Jim Henson, his story. Here's what he says. Paul said, Jim had to be the easiest and most trusting person I ever had the opportunity to work with. When we met for the first time as a team in my den to discuss the basic outline of the story, I was given a gift I will always treasure. Walking Jim to his car, I told him I'd keep him in the loop as Kenny and I wrote the songs for the film. He responded with, "Oh, that's all right, Paul. I'll hear them in the studio. When we record them, I'm sure they'll be terrific." Never in decades of writing songs for a living have I encountered such trust, being given so much freedom. Jim gave us his trust, and we gave him the rainbow connection. I'd sing it for you, but I'd ruin it if I did, so I won't. But you know this song. It's a fruit of being trusted. Trusting is a better way to lead. That's the second stewardship. Now, that moves me to the third stewardship. And the third stewardship is inspiring. Leaders model, leaders trust, leaders inspire. Inspiring is the third stewardship. It's connecting to why it matters. And here's what I want to say. Inspiring others is the new competitive advantage. It's a huge advantage for any organization today to inspire your people. That's how you're going to win the war for talent. That's how you're going to win in the workplace and build a great culture. That inspires. Inspiring others is a learnable skill. That's a paradigm shift. Most people equate charisma and inspiration as if they were the same, but they're different. I know a lot of charismatic people who may motivate, but they don't inspire. I know other people who are not necessarily charismatic, but who are extremely inspiring. Inspiring others is a learnable skill. So everyone can inspire. Everyone can inspire. Now look, you're already going to inspire when you do the first two stewardships. When you model the behavior, that inspires. When you trust people, that inspires. So you're already halfway home by modeling and trusting. But what brings you home is when you connect with people through caring and belonging, and connect people to purpose, to meaning, and to contribution. That also inspires. And you do it at every level with yourself, your relationships, your team. Connect with people, connect to purpose. And everyone can learn to do this. Inspiring others is learnable. Everyone can inspire. So let's talk about how to do this. It starts with connecting with people. Oh, by the way, I'll say this. Inspiration is the new engagement. It's the next frontier of engagement. Engagement is important. I love engagement. We're always focused on engaging our people. But there's another frontier, another level, inspiration. And this is, to use the Wayne Gretzky metaphor, this is where the puck is going to be. When he talks about why he was so good at hockey, I skate to where the puck is going to be. Inspiration is where the puck is going to be. For our teams, for our cultures, for our leadership. Inspiration is the next frontier of engagement, the new engagement. In a study from Bain shows that employees who are inspired are 56% more productive than even engaged employees. So engagement is great, but inspiration is even better. And they're way more productive than merely satisfied employees. So this is where we're going. Inspiration. Now here's another thing. Inspired teams and inspired cultures will help us win in the workplace, and we'll keep our people, attract them, and retain them. Here's Wegmans Food Markets, Colleen Wegmans, CEO. And this is the grocery store business. And the average turnover rate in the grocery store business is 48%. At high trust highly inspired Wegmans. It's 3%, 1/16th the respective industry average. And that's in the grocery store business. You think, how can you inspire there? But they do through their leadership approach, trust and inspire approach. This works. So how do we do this? Well, it's about those two things: connect with people, connect to purpose. Let's take connect with people first. It starts with yourself. Find your why. In other words, become inspired yourself. Think about it. It's hard to inspire others if you yourself aren't inspired. So find your why. What makes you tick? What works for you? What's your purpose? Spend that time. Discover it. Get that fire burning inside, the fire within burning inside of you. If you find your why, if you're inspired, you can inspire others better. I love the airline metaphor. Put your own mask on first before helping others. To inspire others, you need to first be inspired. So that's the first step for yourself. Find your why. And when you do, here's what that does. Here's what Angela Duckworth said. She said, you can go from job to career to calling, all without changing your occupation when you find your why. It is purpose that turns a job into a calling. Now, that's where we start. Connect with people, starting with yourself. Now, how about at the relationship level? It's all about caring. At the team level, it's all about belonging. If you focus on caring for those you work with and belonging at the team level, you will inspire. If that's all you did was build a relationship of caring with someone, you will inspire them. And for a team, if there's a sense of belonging, that will inspire them. It is powerful. And so let's get good at this. We can get good at this. We can do this. Here's Indra Nooyi. When she became the CEO of PepsiCo, she went to India to visit her mom. Her dad had passed away. And all these people came over to visit. And they came up to Indra's mom. And rather than praising Indra as, you're the new CEO of PepsiCo, they came up to Indra's mom saying, wow, what a great job you've done as a parent to raise such a wonderful child. All the praise was to the mom. And Indra was kind of struck by it and loved it because her mom loved it so much. So when she came back, she said, I'm going to do something for the parents of my leaders. And she wrote personal letters, as many as 400, to the parents of her executives to say why she was so grateful to them for raising such a responsible daughter or son. It was so tremendous as a member of their team. And she said, it occurred to me I'd never thank the parents of my executives for the gift of their child at PepsiCo. It showed an extraordinary amount of care and sense of belonging, and everyone felt it. The executives felt it, and their parents felt it. And no one wanted to badmouth Indra in front of their parents because they loved her, because she showed this kind of caring and concern. Really a powerful process. So that's the first thing. Connect with people through caring and belonging. You can get really, really, really good at this. The second way to inspire is connect to purpose. And here's the whole idea. You can create and embed purpose, meaning, and contribution into almost any role, into almost any organization. And a simple example of this, I will say this, that the NASA example, John F. Kennedy, he said, let's put a man on the moon and get him back to the Earth in a decade. This was clear back in the 60s. And then a year or two later, he was touring a NASA facility. And he came across a janitor, and he asked the janitor, what do you do? And he said, I'm working to put a man on the moon and return him back to the Earth before the end of the decade. In other words, the purpose had gone down to every job, any role. And that's powerful. And you can do this. We can find the ways to connect people to purpose, to meaning and contribution. And we all desire it. Sometimes people say the millennials are the purpose generation. But you know what? Here's what Kathleen Hogan said, the chief people officer of Microsoft. She said, a lot is written about how millennials want purpose. What I've come to learn is that everybody wants purpose. That's the secret sauce. Every generation wants purpose. They want meaning. They want contribution. What matters to people is mattering. So connect people to purpose, meaning, and contribution, and you will inspire. So my point is, inspiring others is a learnable skill. How? By connecting with people through caring and belonging and connecting to purpose, to meaning, and to contribution. Everyone can inspire. So that brings me back. Those are the three stewardships of a trust-inspired leader. They model, they trust, they inspire. Modeling is who we are. Trusting is how we lead. Inspiring is connecting to why. We can get good at this. We can lead in these ways. This is the future of leadership. Trust and inspire. Command and control no longer works. And maybe it didn't work all that great in the past either, for that matter. But we might have gotten some results. But in our new world, not relevant. It's not relevant for those two epic imperatives of winning in the workplace, winning in the marketplace. We need a new style of leadership that is relevant. A tennis racket to play tennis. Trust and inspire. Where we start with the right fundamental beliefs, and then we model, we trust, and we inspire. That simple. That powerful. We can do this. I'm going to conclude with a little example of a trust and inspire leader and team working together. This is Eric Weinmeier. He climbed Mount Everest, the first that did so blind. He refers to himself as, I'm the blind guy who climbed Everest. How he did this was remarkable. How the team did this was remarkable. It was trust and inspire at every step of the way for every person, for every member of that team. And they achieved a remarkable outcome. Let's watch this video.
The tallest point on Earth. For a sighted person, climbing Mount Everest is one of the greatest physical challenges on the face of the Earth. Ever since I went blind, it's been a dream in the back of my mind to climb the world's tallest peak. I knew that only 10% of the people who try Everest make it to the top. And for every 6 people who summit, I've heard 1 dies. As a blind person, I knew I could never get to the summit of Everest alone. And what would get me to the top wasn't necessarily technology. What would get me to the summit were the people that I surrounded myself with. After that, I forced myself to sit in front of my tent and envision myself and my team on the top, to actually bleed myself forward. There's a 12,000-foot drop on this side, a 9,000-foot drop on the other side. At that point, I don't think it really matters which side you fall off of. Sometimes you have to rise to the occasion right now. You got to be good and execute right now, every step of the way.
We're on the top. I can't believe it.
You did it!
I can't believe it.
Good job! You did it, man. We're on top of the world. We are on top of the world.
I don't think I'm very different from anyone else. I think everyone has a yearning for greatness inside them. That ability to reach out into uncertainty, in a sense, I guess, to climb blind.
Now, here's what the filmmaker said. There was a filmmaker for the video you saw. Michael Brown, he said this: what I find to be really intriguing about that milestone, where everyone gets to the top, is that everybody on the team put aside their own self-serving need to get to the top, to get behind Eric's summit, service above self-interest. Most of the time on Everest, it's every man or woman for himself saying, I want to be on top. They're more just concerned about, well, am I going to reach my goals? Our team had a loftier purpose to get behind Eric and make sure he was able to get to the top and back down. As a result of that, everybody on the team was able to get to the top. They modeled, they trusted, they inspired. And they achieved extraordinary results and also grew the people, built the relationships, built the trust. This is a better way to lead that's so needed in our world of work today. So as we walk out of our session today, I've already asked you to think about the fundamental beliefs, to pick one of those to work on. I want you to focus on the 3 stewardships. Focus on modeling the behavior by going first. and find a way that you can go first in some way, shape, or form as a leader in modeling. I want you to focus on becoming more trusting, to lead out in trusting others. This is the kind of leadership that's needed in our world today. Not just being trustworthy, but being trusting. And so challenge yourself and look for opportunities you can become more trusting and extend more trust than you might have in the past in a smart way. And then finally, focus on this third stewardship, inspiring others by really getting good at connecting with people through caring and belonging and connecting people to purpose, to meaning and contribution. Everyone can inspire. It's a learnable skill. Get good at this. Trust and inspire is a new way to lead in a new world. And in our new world of work, we need a new way to lead. The old way doesn't work anymore. Trust and inspire does. It can, it will. And we all can become trust and inspire leaders. And in the process, unleash the greatness that is inside of everyone. Thank you to our listeners, viewers, subscribers, readers of Soundview. I turn the time back over to the Soundview team. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you as we look at this trust and inspired journey. Thank you, my friends.
I'd like to thank Stephen M.R. Covey for such a wonderfully insightful and engaging presentation today. It's clear that Stephen has made it his life's work to understand trust in leadership and organizations. The book is Trust and Inspire: How Truly Great Leaders Unleash Greatness in Others by Stephen M.R. Covey. As a reminder, a replay link will be sent to all registrants so you can revisit the highlights of today's webinar. Be sure to visit summary.com for more Soundview content. This concludes today's webinar.